Hey watercolor friends, thanks for being here today. I realize that as I'm filming these tutorials, that there are these little things that I do kind of behind the scenes that are so second nature to me. They've become kind of like habits that I don't even think to talk about them or address them in my videos, but they're little things that are really helpful. And as I'm watching other artists' tutorials, I notice them kind of naturally doing some of the same things, and they also, it's just something that they probably don't even think about or realize that they're doing anymore. So they don't really draw attention to it either. So I figured I'm going to share those things with you guys because they help me, so maybe they'll help you too. So here are 5 of my painting habits. Number 1, before I even paint, I spray down my pans to activate them. These are my pans. I have taken my tubes of watercolor paint and squeezed them out into these empty pans and let them dry. So they are dry, they're not wet, they need to be reactivated in order for me to use them. Adding water to your paints in advance to loosen them up a bit makes a huge difference when it comes time to mix colors. It takes significantly longer to try to get the paint from the pans to your palette or paper when they're dry and only using the water on the brush versus when they've already got some water on them and they're a bit softer. The pigments also saturate the brush more fully, so you've got vibrant colors that are ready to go. I bought this spray bottle at the dollar store. It's one of those unspoken materials that I use every day, not just for activating my paints, but for other cool effects on my paper too. The first thing I do when I'm getting ready to paint is spray down my pans. By the time I have the rest of my materials set up and ready to go, they're activated and ready for me. So if you aren't already spraying down your paints or adding drops of water to them before you paint, give this a try. It will make grabbing those paints on your brush much easier for you. Number 2, I use an old brush to move my paints from my pans to my palette. The bristles on a paintbrush are delicate, even the synthetic ones. We spend money on these paintbrushes, so we want to take good care of them and we want them to last a long time. Dipping a paintbrush into pans over and over again can be hard on the bristles, and especially on the sharp points on brushes. I use this super cheap brush every time I'm moving paint from my pans to my palette. I can be really hard on these bristles and I don't care if they get ruined because I never paint with this brush. It came in a big set of brushes. I think the whole thing costs about $2. So to help your brushes last longer, consider designating a cheap one as your palette brush. Number 3, I remove excess water from my brush before dipping it into my pans to get that paint out to put onto my palette. When I'm moving paint onto my palette, I like the paint to be as dark of a value as I can possibly get, and then I add water to it to lighten it up once it's already on my palette. It's so much easier to add water to lighten a color than it is to keep going back and grabbing pigment off my pans and adding it to my palette to try and darken the color. So this seems so complicated trying to explain it, but it's really the simplest thing, I swear. This little habit that I've developed is that I blot off excess water from my brush before I dip it into my pans. If there's a ton of water on my brush and I dip it into the pans, I'm diluting the color just from the water that's on my brush. And if I need a dark color, that just won't do. So I make sure my brush isn't too wet when I'm getting paint. It requires some extra pressure to get that paint up without the help of water on the brush, but if you need dark paint, this is how we get it. Either that or you have to squeeze it out directly from your tubes onto your palette. Remember though, my paints are already a little wet because I sprayed them down to activate them first, so that makes them just soft enough that my brush can grab them. Once I get the dark, concentrated paint on my palette, then I add water to it as needed to lighten it up. This gives me a lot of values of color to work with. It's also why I love having an open style palette like this. I have plenty of room to add water to the dark value and then to lighten it up in another area of the palette. So if you sometimes struggle with getting dark enough pigments on your palette, try eliminating excess water by dabbing your brush on your towel before dipping it into your pans. All right, it's time for number 4. I always see the color wheel in my mind whenever I'm getting ready to paint a new piece and I'm trying to select colors for it. When I sit down to paint, and 80% of the time it's going to be flowers of some kind, I have to think about what colors my flowers will be. I want the colors to look beautiful together, but sometimes it's hard to know for sure which colors will look nice together before they're even down on my paper. Immediately in my mind, the color wheel pops up, and I'll often choose complementary colors for a bright, bold floral arrangement. So complementary colors sit opposite of each other on the color wheel. So purple and yellow, blue and orange, and red and green are complementary colors. Complementary colors intensify each other and create visual contrast. But if I want a more harmonious, soft color palette, I'll choose analogous colors. So the colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, those are the analogous colors. So colors like pink and red, pink and purple, these are analogous colors because they're right next to each other. Or like blue and purple, yellow and orange. So analogous colors, they balance each other out, they create a more cohesive look, they're not going to clash against each other. So you can see here, I painted with purple and pink. These are analogous colors, so that's a lot more of a softer look. For this painting in particular, I knew I wanted to paint some orange flowers, and I had a really hard time deciding which colors I was going to pair with them. And I figured orange is already pretty bold, like let's just go for it. So I painted some little blue flowers behind it, and you can see how the blue really contrasts against the orange. So the orange is much more striking. If I had made these flowers yellow, it would be a little bit more of a softer look. Here's another example of analogous colors. They're all like bluish purple colors in here for the flowers. So it looks unified and soft. Again, indigo, purple, these are analogous colors. So again, another softer arrangement, whereas like this tree that I was just experimenting with, you have a blue tree trunk and orange leaves. So the blue looks very bold. The orange looks very bold against each other because they are complementary colors. So the next time you're getting ready to paint and can't decide which colors to use, consider looking at a color wheel and choose some complementary colors or some analogous colors. Number 5, I paint every day. The best habit you can have as an artist is to create art every day. Painting has become so much of a daily routine for me that I hardly have to think about it or plan for it anymore. After my kids are tucked in for bed and I've said goodnight and they are asleep, I just naturally walk into my studio, turn on the studio lights, spray down my paints, and get ready to create. I've been doing this pretty much every day for so long now, it just comes so naturally to me, just like brushing my teeth. Sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I don't really feel like it, but I show up anyway. Sometimes I literally only paint one single flower. That's all I have in me. Or I just practice a few simple brushstroke drills. Other nights, I paint for over an hour. Regardless of how much time I spend painting, I'm going to wake up the next morning a better painter than I was the day before. There's endless research that shows that practicing anything just a little bit each day, as opposed to practicing it for a big chunk of time, say like once a week or once a month, is so much better. So don't wait until you have an hour of time to sit down and paint. Just carve out 5 minutes of your day to get a little bit of painting in. Maybe it will turn into an hour, maybe it won't, but you're still going to make progress and you're still going to get better. So there you have my 5 unspoken painting habits. I hope you learned something and that this video was helpful. I'll see you in the next one.